Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Disaster Preparedness Conference. On behalf of Pima County Board of Chosen Freeholders, I'm Freeholder Director Dan Bile. I'd like to welcome everybody to our annual conference and update. We have some very distinguished people here to present new information or any ideas that may be happening. And obviously, as we watch the coast with our fragile environment, this area, especially this time of the year, different things do occur. So luckily this year, we've had some warm, clear weather, but the ocean temperatures are still very warm. A lot of things can happen. So today we'll get some updates from some people that have been here before and some new people. So I'd like to welcome everybody here today on behalf of the County Board of Freeholders. Freeholder Ralph Sheets to my left and Freeholder Jerry Thornton in the front there. And at this time I'd like to everybody to please rise for our flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. This time I'd like to call on Freeholder Vice Director Ralph Sheets, who's our representative to the Office of Emergency Management and Disaster Preparedness, to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Director, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's good every year that we be able to get together and put on such seminars as this. I know each one of our people back in their units I know we're pretty well prepared, but we never know when one of these things are going to hit us. And one of these things should hit us with a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration. And you know, we got very good plans, excellent plans laid out for evacuations and different things we have to do in taking care of people, animals, just about anything. We had the reports and plans to cover those things. However, sometimes there's always little things that pop up because I don't know, in anything you do, that things always run very smoothly. Occasionally, something pops up, but there's nothing like planning and having appropriate plans. And I have to say, those things we have. And if we're able to, if the storms all allow us to follow the plans that we have and the different things that we do, well, things should go off well. And everybody in the county can rest well, and we'll be able to take care of our people, our visitors, our animals, and everything we have here in the county. Now, different things that we're talking about, I certainly hope we never have to do. Because to evacuate and to move out of the county is not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of personnel, a lot of people involved, and I'll tell you, it has to go according to the way things have to work. Because this, believe it or not, is a very difficult area to evacuate. It's probably one of the worst in the country to evacuate. But we've been lucky. We've never been hit with a big storm yet like this. We've had a lot of northeasters, and northeasters too can also give us a lot of practice. But a northeaster, you can stay put many times. But these kind of storms we hit many times, you can't stay put, and you have to evacuate and be able to move out. So with that being said, I know we got a lot of excellent speakers today here. A lot of people who have good knowledge about storms, knowledge about evacuation, and of course, I have our senator here, who we definitely need, our prosecutors here, and quite a few other people I see that's here in the audience and all. And to each of you, I thank you for your services towards this. And everyone who works in emergency management, I think it's important. So again, thank you very much, because it's going to be a long morning here for us. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you.
This time we're going to start to have our presenters speak, and I just want to give you a few guidelines we like to have today. Our goal is to be out of here by 12 noon, but at the same time we want to have some public interaction if possible. And what we would like to do after each presenter, if you have any specific questions, and I mean a question, I don't want to take a comment, an editorial, an agenda. If you have a specific question to gain knowledge that may be beneficial to the audience, we'd like to hear it. And if you give us your name and address when you're called upon, so we know who you are, and we'll ask those people, raise your hand, and we'll call upon as many as we can for the limited amount of time we have today. But we'll try to get different people to ask the questions so members of the audience will have the ability to participate. And after some of the speakers today, they will be leaving right after they speak. So if you want to see them, you can go outside in the lobby, and potentially if they have enough time, they'll be able to talk to you personally. Or if you wait till the end for the speakers that are here, I'm sure everyone will be glad to talk to you individually as time permits. So at this time, our first presenter is going to be our Senator Jeff Van Drew to talk about plans to approve evacuation in emergency. Senator, welcome.
Thank you, Freeholder Director, and I want to thank this Freeholder Board for their constant advocacy and work in relation to this. It's very obviously important in Cape May County, and this has been a board that over the years, even dating back to quite a few number of years ago now that I sat on the board with all of you, have always worked hard to try to make sure that we're keeping our county safe as possible. I want to thank our prosecutor, our emergency management director, Frank McCall, and of course our prosecutor, Bob Taylor, for the work that they've done with this, along with everybody else. Every time you mention someone, you always forget someone else. There's been a lot of good work done in Cape May County and in South Jersey over these issues. With that being said, it is always a challenge, and we only have to think back to last winter, which was basically we had a lot of rain and a lot of snow and a lot of flooding and a lot of wind, and just to see what could seem to be relatively minor, how challenging storms can be, how unexpected they can be, and how important these issues are. I always like to begin, whether I'm in the Senate and I speak about this issue or just about anywhere, to say, this truly, many issues are not, but truly these are not issues that are Republican issues or Democrat issues or liberal or conservative, or these are just issues about public safety. And regardless of where you sit in the political spectrum, the health, safety, and welfare of our people is a primary requirement and a primary responsibility that we have in government. If there's anything we should be doing this. And the reason that I discuss that, because at times, quite frankly, in the Senate and in the legislature, there are those that don't realize how important the issue is. There are some folks from certain parts of the state that don't realize how vulnerable we can be, don't realize what a big issue this is, how important it is, and the time to find out is not when the storm hits. It's always interesting in emergencies. After an emergency occurs, people say, why weren't we prepared? Why didn't we do this? Why wasn't this in place? We're trying to ensure as much as we can that, God forbid this ever does happen, that folks say, you know what, they were on top of it, they were ready, they knew what they were doing, they were protecting the people, protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the constituents. So that's why we speak about it over and over again, and I'm going to continue to advocate for it. And by advocacy, I mean this. A number of years ago, it struck especially the legislative teams in the 9th District, which is Ocean County, which is a very vulnerable place, which is Senator Connors and Assemblyman Rumpf. Particularly, I work with they are ranking Republicans in the Assembly and the Senate, and I worked with my two colleagues in the Assembly and of course now in the Senate to have a bipartisan effort to establish back then a task force to really review all of these issues very thoroughly. We had meetings, and I know the prosecutor was involved, the board was involved, Frank McCall was involved and attended, I think, just about every one of the meetings. We had meetings from Middlesex County all the way down to Cumberland County and all the counties in between, and spoke with emergency management coordinators, directors, spoke with the Red Cross, spoke with other elected officials, sheriff's departments, police departments, anybody, anywhere who was involved at any level, the Weather Service, NOAA. I mean, just literally, we went across the board, many, many dozens and dozens of hours of meetings to determine how ready we are, where are we on top of this, what do we need to do, how can we better? How can we be better? Because quite frankly, we always need to be better. And there are certain areas where we absolutely can do better. Out of all that, and that was a task force, that was established by legislation. It was a law that said this task force had a certain responsibility. It produced, in essence, what you would all call a book, some binding documents that made a number of recommendations, quite a few, which resulted in about 10 different pieces of legislation, 10 individual bills that we've been working at getting through the legislature. And it occurred to us as we worked on this, it occurred to me most especially that we would start to get 1 or 2 or 3 bills through, we get through one house or not the other, that we weren't, and again, in plain English, I always tell you how it is, we weren't getting it done. It wasn't all getting done. So what we did was, in this session, we've merged all those bills into one big omnibus bill that deals with all this. And the good news is we're really moving now. That big bill went through the Law and Public Safety Committee of the Senate, which doesn't hear many bills, and Senator Girgente did hear the bill, moved it through, went through in a bipartisan level for the first time. It now just went through the Budget Committee, which I sit on, and I got it through the Budget Committee again, and that is the first time it went through there. And it's going to be coming up for a floor vote and on the Senate. I don't believe there'll be any problem with that, and it's moved through the Law and Public Safety Committee on the Assembly side with Assemblyman Albano and Milam pushing it. Bottom line is the bill is further than it's ever been before. I really truly believe we're going to get it done in this session. Why is that important? There are some issues. Some of the issues that came out of the meetings that we have where we can do better. For example, and freeholder sheets so appropriately mention the idea of animals. And probably some folks are thinking, you know, people are split. Some people love animals more than others. I always make the joke, you know, God forbid it ever happens. My family, we're not leaving without my German Shepherds. Somehow they're coming with us and we're figuring out how to do it. We're certainly not leaving them there. But the important part of that issue, quite frankly, even if you are not someone who's all that concerned with pets and animals are, many people will not leave without their pets. We've seen this in storm after storm historically in the country, that most especially senior citizens will not leave without their pet. And if they don't leave, they're endangering their lives and also the lives of the people who are emergency personnel that are trying to save them. So we have to deal with this issue. Now, what's interesting about that is that, of course, as some folks may know, and we found out it was explained to us very clearly, the Red Cross is not going to accept pets in their shelters. Shelters in general are not going to accept pets because of health reasons, health hazards, allergies, all the problems that would occur with pets. So we need to have a real plan to deal with that. In each and every county, within the towns, and in the entire state of New Jersey, we need to have a plan on how to deal with pets. So one of the interesting issues, and I know I've spoken, Frank's gotten some preliminary information on it, there is now a national organization that deals with this and helps states deal with it, just as the Red Cross deals with people and sheltering and evacuation. There is now a national organization that deals with the pet issue that literally will train volunteers in your county, will come in and set up temporary shelters, will help with the evacuation, again, so you have a system in place. And that's something we're going to work on. What the legislation requires is that each and every county have a way to deal with this and that we deal with it in a more unified way. Hospitals and nursing homes all have to have evacuation plans. But what was interesting, what was brought out by many of the individuals involved, they're not necessarily a completely coordinated effort among those hospitals and nursing homes on how they're going to deal with the issue together if they're going to be utilizing some of the same resources. So while individually I know that Crest Haven and Cape Regional are doing a wonderful job, how's that all going to interact with the other hospitals and nursing homes? We need to know that better. We need to work on that more. Again, that's a requirement of the legislation. Sheltering. It struck me is interesting is not probably the right word, but it's the kindest word I can use. We have spent and are spending not millions, but billions of dollars in building schools. Very important work. Yet at the same time, these schools, many of them, as was pointed out to me by the experts in this area, are not shelter ready. This is something we have to look at. Interesting division, interesting discussion in the Budget Committee when we went through. Originally, the bill, which it should not have because we can't afford it, said that we should even refurbish existing schools and make them shelter ready. Quite frankly, we don't have the money, we're not able to do that. But at least when we're building new schools, we should make sure that they're shelter ready. Some of the members of the Budget Committee had concerns with that, justifiably, because we are financially pinched, and that could cost a little more to build a school, to make it shelter ready. On the other hand, I think that maybe some of those folks didn't understand how necessary that is and how shelter short we are. We don't have enough shelters long-term or short-term, quite frankly. And if it's a major storm, that's going to be a major issue and a major challenge, and something that we need to look at. The legislation to be fiscally responsible, back up, it went in the Budget Committee, had a fiscal note with it. It had an appropriation that was $4 million and change, took that out. We don't have money in the state of New Jersey, and you know what? We're going to have to make do, and the existing departments within this state are going to have to figure out how to enact these plans without spending more money. The governor agrees with that, I agree with that, and the legislature came to terms with that as well. So it does not have a fiscal note anymore, and we're going to do that within the existing structure and the existing dollars that we have. The shelter issue is an issue that right now in that legislation we have amended the bill that says all new schools would require to at least, at the very least, to at least look at this and hopefully be shelter ready as we go into the future. It was interesting that some of the legislators pointed out and some people pointed out that some of the older schools are, you know, these real big old schools, they may not have the computer technologies and they may not be as comfortable as we like, and the cafeteria in certain areas of them certainly may not be as nice, but interestingly enough, some of them, not all of them, some of them were built so well. They're such dense, well-built, heavy brick structures. Some of them would be shelter ready, where some of the new schools, a lot of them, because we used a lot of preformed trusses and other kinds of construction materials that save us money and time, are not. That's something we need to deal with as we move into the future. Other issues, just briefly, that this bill deals with, again, this big omnibus bill, it has it all in now, the one bill, which makes it so much easier to move it through the legislature. Emergency personnel. It's interesting that obviously we know that emergency personnel are going to be here, they're going to stay here, they're going to save lives, they put their life on the line. Their families need to be taken care of. Their families didn't make that bargain. Their families, we have to have a way to make sure that they can get out. And you know, while everybody else's family, you know, is getting together and figuring out together how they're going to leave, family and friends, a good part of this family is saving other people's lives. They're not home with their husbands or wives or kids. They're saving lives of other people. So we need plans in place in each and every county, and I believe that Cape May does, in order to deal with the families of emergency personnel, to make sure that they're not worried, that their families are being taken care of properly, that they're not distracted and concerned about that. That's a requirement of the legislation. An inventory, just an inventory of what we need. It really is very diverse from county to county, city to city, town to town. The issues are so different. The issues that the city of Newark, and they could certainly have in a real storm hitting the coast of New Jersey, could have some severe problems as well. The issues that they have are so different than the issues that Cape May City would have. But to know what it is you need in an emergency so that we can immediately access it, so we don't have to figure it out when the emergency is happening, after the emergency is happening, during the emergency, but that we would actually be able to figure this out, you know, as in advance, so that we are ready. And that's a very important issue, as well as what the inventory is that we need for the most significant structures and for the most significant functions, power companies, et cetera. What do they need? What backup do they need? Again, there's diversity. It is and not good kind of diversity. There isn't necessarily a significant consistency throughout the state, and it's an issue that folks obviously thought needed to be addressed. Infrastructure, one of the most difficult issues of all. How to get people out within the given roadways that we have, the reverse lane strategy. Cape May County has done wonderful work with that and working with reverse lane strategy. They may even speak to that later. Again, Mr. McCall and Mr. Taylor, both independently and together, have worked on that. The County of Cape May, the Board of Freeholders, on actually running, I'm going to use my vernacular, experiments. I think they call it tabletop exercises and other things to see, gee, how's it going to work? In other words, when people have to leave, everybody's going to be going north and west. So everybody's going to be leaving via 47 and 55 and the Atlantic City Expressway and the Garden State Parkway. You've got to move everybody out. we have an issue, you know, and I know it's an issue that we're going to have to deal with the Department of Transportation and with the Governor's Office, and we're going to have to continue to press on it in Cape May County. Route 9 is not contiguous in this county, and regardless of how we feel about the bridge or not feel about the Beasley's Point Bridge, it isn't even the point. We have to, the state has to, it's the state's responsibility to make sure that as we get people out, that we're able to get the National Guard, the necessary troops in. And that's an issue that's going to have to be dealt with in the future as well. We are vulnerable, and we need to do better with that. And we do have infrastructure problems. And people who understand this and know a lot more about it than I do will tell you that if it's a real bad storm, to get everybody out safely, you just can't do that 24 or 36 hours in advance. It takes days, and it's a serious issue, and it's dependent upon the given number of cars that the road can take at the given time of year. And if it's at a time of year when we have tourists here and our population goes up many-fold, the challenges are all that much greater. Those are just some of the areas that we're working on. There's a good deal of support for this legislation. It's a good bill, and I've been very proud to work with Senator Connors, who's a good senator from Ocean County, and we're working on it together. It is moving through the legislature. I believe that it will become a law of the state of New Jersey and that it will pass, and we're closer to it than we ever did before. And I think it'll bring a lot of these issues to the forefront, which is very, very significant and very important. Sometimes in the political mix and what I call the political sexy issues, you know, the issues that everybody wants to talk about in the day, these issues that are so important, that are the primary responsibility of government, again, the health, safety, and welfare, all of you, all of our families, all of the people who live in this state and certainly live in this region are going to depend upon so many of the emergency personnel and the plans that are put in place literally to save their lives, their structures, and their welfare. This is really important stuff, and sometimes it gets forgotten because it's not the hottest political issue of the day, but it's our responsibility to keep moving forward with it and keep pushing, because God forbid it ever does happen, a whole lot of people are going to rely on those plans being in place and rely on the good emergency personnel that we have to enact them. So again, I really commend the Board of Freeholders, the Freeholder Director, the entire board. I see that many of them are here for doing this, because there are a lot of counties, quite frankly, that don't think about it, don't do it, don't worry about it, and it's very, very important. So thank you, Mr. Director.
Thank you, Senator. Is there anyone that has any questions for the Senator this morning? Yes, sir. Gentleman in the back there. Can I have your name and address, please, sir?
Ramsey Geyer, West Cape May, Commissioner of Public Safety. What is the bill number or the name of the bill that this is under?
And of course, see, always the new guys in government ask the question I can't answer. I should have the bill number with me. Anybody that's interested in the bill number, and then the reason is because it's morphed, it changed, because when we merged it and put it into one big bill, it has a new bill number. If you call my office, because we always appreciate resolutions of support for this, my office will be able to get you both the Senate bill number and the Assembly bill number. I'm sorry, I don't have it on hand.
Yes, sir.
Bill Davenport, City of Wildwood. Is there any provision in that bill for generators for existing buildings?
What it does is, and when we speak about that inventory I spoke about, yes, it does discuss it. And again, within your county plans, there are provisions for that, and the folks here in the county can, really speak to that better. But one of the issues that we found statewide, I'm not saying in Cape May County, that in some cases, some buildings and some structures that were of extreme importance didn't necessarily have that backup, did not have the backup. We found in some cases where new buildings were being built, when I say shelter ready, and we speak about these schools, where they necessarily didn't have that ability either. So again, it would seem to me when you're building a new school, and I understand cost factors are very important, but this is life and limb here, that they should have the ability to have generator backup and to know where to access the generators if they don't have them. So the idea behind this inventory part of the bill is that even if you don't have it, that you'll immediately know where to get it, that you've already interacted with FEMA, that when the emergency comes, you're not going to say, gee, now where do we need generators, and how are we going to keep, you know, our power plants going, and how's the hospital, that everybody's going to know, okay, this is what we have, we're ready, and this is what we don't have, but we've already in advance spoken with FEMA, they have the inventory, they're going to be able to get it to us immediately. That's the idea behind it, if it works right, and that's a big if.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Senator. The Senator has, I think, another commitment this morning and may be leaving us, so if you need to see the Senator, I would do it quickly.
They said that they're going to have all the distinguished and knowledgeable guests speak, so they had me speak first. Now that part's going to start. Thank you very much for having me.
Our next presenter is Charles Mckenna, Director of New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. Welcome.
Morning, folks. Not being a senator, they want me to speak at the podium. But Senator, thank you for your comments. Freeholders, Mr. Prosecutor, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thanks for having me. I think things like this are really important for people to come and be able to hear what the government is doing and to be able to exchange ideas. And preparedness is a very important thing, and like the Senator said, it may not be the most sexy thing that people get to talk about, but it is the thing at the end of the day that perhaps can save our lives. What did they say? You can never be too rich, too thin, or too prepared. And preparedness, while a lot of this focuses on the preparedness of the government and the preparedness of the county, I really think it's important to note that preparedness is everyone's responsibility. Everybody has to be prepared. Every household has to be prepared. Every municipality has to be prepared. Every county has to be prepared, and every state has to be prepared. And in order to be able to respond to a catastrophic event, I think every link in that chain has to be at the ready and be as prepared as they can be. You know, the way that it should work is you have your household plans, and if you become overwhelmed, then you need the municipality to come in. If the municipality becomes overwhelmed, the county comes in and assists. The county becomes overwhelmed, the state comes in. The state is overwhelmed, and the federal government comes in. That should be how it works, based upon the level of the event. So you have to, and everyone has to, on every level, plan. You have to plan, have a plan in place. You have to prepare. You have to make sure that that plan, you can execute on that plan. And you have to practice the plan every once in a while. Because when you practice the plan, maybe you find out that certain things in that plan don't work anymore, or the threat has changed. There's a constant dynamic. So you have to make sure that your plans are continually updated and ready to go. FEMA recently published the results of a 2009 survey that they did in the New York and northern New Jersey area. And what they found that only 37% of the households had an emergency plan that included instructions for household members about where to go and what to do in the event of a disaster. Only 37% of the people. Now, this was done in New York City, where they've had a disaster or two recently, not of perhaps a hurricane magnitude, but they should be acutely aware of this. And even those folks, only 37% of the people had plans. Only 49% of the people claimed that they were familiar with their community evacuation routes. Only 50% of the people said that they had disaster supplies in their homes. Only 48% said that they had flashlights in their house. 35% had first aid kits. Only 26% said that they had batteries. Only 19% mentioned in the survey that they had a portable radio with batteries that was battery operated, or a crank radio that they could listen to. Only 22% of the people who responded to that survey said that they had ever attended a meeting on how to prepare for a disaster. Only 27% of those people said that they had ever attended a first aid course, and only 10% of those people had ever been involved in an evacuation drill outside of the workplace. You know, we have to question how prepared are we, you know, on every level. Now, down here, you folks, you know, perhaps because of where you are, you're more acutely aware of the threat, and you have a better plan. But the problem is that a lot of us talk about our plans, or we think that plans are a good thing to have. but we don't actually sit down with our families and formulate a plan. And you know, the fact that in New York City and in northern New Jersey, only 37% of the people had plans is distressing. Because you know, we need to know what we're going to do in the case of a catastrophic event. Do we have at least a half a tank of gas in our cars, so that we can get 150 to 200 miles away in case you know, power is out and you're not going to be able to get gas? Do we have a little bit of cash? Do we have supplies in the house? If we're not going to be able to leave, are we going to be able to stay there and sustain ourselves for 3 to 5 days? And if we have the plan, if we know that that's what we need to do we have the supplies in the house? So these are the things that everybody should think of, because if you wait for the county to do things, the county has good plans, and frankly, this county, more than any other county, I think, in the state, has great preparedness plans and practices those preparedness plans because Frank does an excellent job down here. But you know, my grade 2B proverb was, God helps those who help themselves. And at the end of the day, we all have to be responsible for our own safety, so we all should make sure that we're going to be in the best position we can be to help ourselves. And then if we can't do that, to have the county come in and help us if we can't do that. But the first line of defense always is your home, so everybody should be prepared for that. I don't want to create hysteria. We don't want to do that, but we also don't want to have complacency. You don't always have to say, well, I don't have to worry about it because someone else is going to worry about it for me. We all should worry about it. It should be the responsibility of each of us, not only in our homes, but those of us who work for the state, it's our responsibility. Those of us who work for the counties, it's our responsibility. And those of us who work for the counties, it's our responsibility. But along the chain, everybody has a certain amount of responsibility. And that's going to be my main message for today, is that we all have to work together to fulfill our roles to the maximum extent possible if we are going to be safe and resilient as a county or as a state. Municipalities and counties also have to engage in that same sort of planning process. You know, they have to do a hazard analysis. What are the main hazards that a particular county is going to face, and plan for those hazards. They have to develop plans, and in this county they have them, and they have to test those plans constantly through exercises. Because you know, you can think that you have the best plan in the world, it looks great on paper, but when you sit down to exercise that plan, you find out that there are gaps in that plan. You find out that your communication system perhaps isn't as good as you thought it is. You don't have the telephone numbers for the folks you thought. You know, one of the things that came out of Katrina was a lot of the state employees and government employees, they couldn't find because they had fled themselves. And how do you get in touch with them? Well, they found that the best way to get in touch with their employees was through their personal emails, which they could access from all over the country to find them. They found out that in real times of trouble like that, the cell phone lines jam, and you can't get cell phone calls through. But what you can do is instant messaging and text messaging. As much as I bemoan it every time the kids are doing nothing and paying no attention to me, and text messaging, it is text messaging that gets through when cell phone calls don't. Because text messages, it turns out, travel in much smaller packets and take up much smaller bandwidth than do telephone calls. So because I'm not very tech savvy, while I would not be able to make the call to the people I need to do, the kids are texting away like that drives me crazy, but their texts are going to get through before my telephone calls get through. So in times of emergency, you know, we know that. And that's what came out of Katrina, but that's also what comes out of practicing these plans and see where the gaps in those plans are. And then you constantly have to maintain those